Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for The Expanse, Season 2, Episodes 1 and 2, Safe and Doors and Corners. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of The Expanse, so I have to give a spoiler warning for The Expanse up to Season 2, Episode 2. If you haven't seen up to the two-part season premiere, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise some things may be spoiled for you. So wow, this was an amazing start to the season. Rarely do I see season openers as strong as this one. I might even go as far to say this was even better than the season 1 finale. This was just great, and a lot of things happened in these two episodes to push the overall story forward in amazing ways. So the first thing I should mention is that at the end of last season, when they folded Miller's storyline into the Rosnate storyline, I felt they needed to introduce another storyline with whole new characters in order to have the same sort of feel with the multi-storyline sort of Game of Thrones style of storytelling that made season 1 so great, and I'll be damned if that isn't exactly what they did. However, another thing I was thinking, and I'm not sure that I mentioned this in any of my season 1 reviews, is that I feel that they needed to expand upon Mars more, because in this series there are 3 major players: Earth, Mars, and the Belt. And we got a lot about the Belt and Belters and the OPA, who are the main focus of the show. And we got a bit of Earth with the Avrasala storyline, but we didn't really see much of Mars, other than those few brief scenes on the Dollinger. And I felt that Mars was the most unexplored faction on the show. So when they opened up the season with a whole new storyline set on Mars that introduces a slew of new characters, oh man, that was just perfect. So we're introduced to a bunch of Marines, which is in keeping with what we know of Mars so far, as they've been established as a very militaristic in nature. And in this episode, we get a lot of the backstory of how they ended up that way, as their ultimate goal was to terraform Mars, but they kept getting attacked by Earth after they declared their independence, and Earth was the dominant power, so they had to become militaristic in order to compete with them and fend them off. And in fact, their plans to terraform Mars had to be put on hold because of that. In this storyline, we're introduced to a new main character of Bobby Draper, who is the commander of her unit, who feels that maybe Mars needs to defeat Earth in war before they can move on to terraforming. Draper is played by New Zealand actress Frankie Adams. But being an adopted New Zealander myself, I always have to point out when there's a New Zealand actor. And Adams is not just an actor, but also a boxer, which makes her pretty fit to play a Marine commander. And she also had a stint on the classic New Zealand soap opera Shortland Street, which has been going for decades. Anyway, I think she does a great job as Draper, and I really get a sense of her aspirations to see Mars become a better place, and also how much of a badass she is. So it makes me wonder if these aspects, as well as the fact that she wants a war with Earth, will come into play. I believe the show introduced this character for a reason, and the fact that she's gunning for a war with Earth, I don't think is mere coincidence. So I get a bit of a feel for Starship Troopers from this storyline. Also, because it's about a bunch of Marines that you can identify with. In fact, I even get a bit of an Aliens vibe for that matter. But I also get a Jarhead vibe from this storyline. From those of you who haven't seen the film, Jarhead is a movie about a bunch of soldiers in the Gulf War who just sit around and train all day and never see any actual combat, and so they end up itching for combat and wanting more than anything else. And that seems to be the case with Draper and her team, as we see them training at the top of the episode, and it seems to be all they ever do. And when they're actually deployed, they're not even used, as the commander determined that the Earth ground troops far outnumbered them. And of course, this doesn't sit well with Draper, as all she wants to do is see some action. So I do think this will affect her overall storyline, as her desire for action may end up starting a war. So, this isn't just any place that they were deployed to. It was the Phoebe station, which, as we know from Season 1, is a vital, important place, as is where the proto-molecule was first tested, and Mars was wise to connect it to the Dollinger and its destruction, so wisely decided to go there. However, it wasn't so smart to blow up Phoebe, as they rightly recognized Earth was desperate to get there. Where they were mistaken wasn't thinking that Earth wanted to retrieve something on Phoebe Station. They simply didn't want Mars to go there, because they didn't want them to learn anything more. So by blowing it up, they were pretty much playing right into their hands. So speaking of Earth, the Everlasala storyline was really interesting as well. As for the most of Season 1, I thought it was a bit dull, but it's certainly kicked into overdrive now. It's really interesting how she is the public face that supports the UN's bold militaristic moves, and that blames Fred Johnson and the OPA for the destruction of the Canterbury and the Dollinger, while behind the scenes she's working covertly to uncover the truth, and she knows that there's a faction in her own government that was complicit in these attacks and is up to no good, so she pretends to be gung-ho for the cause in order to avoid suspicion, and that is amazing. It was also contrasted quite well against the military commander, who was very vocal against military escalation, but he was blatant and honest about his feelings to the point where he resigned. And she kind of had a point when she told him that that was foolish, that he could have done more to change the situation had he stayed and went along with it, and I have to agree with her, because where he was a voice of reason, now that he's gone, he'll probably be replaced with some gung-ho jarhead who just wants war. So ultimately, his resigning will do more harm than good. Whereas Everlasala also tries to curtail military escalation, but under the guise of supporting it, which is a fine tightrope to walk, and a very interesting story. And it's also very interesting that she's recruited her own spy to work to uncover the truth about what's really going on. And most interesting of all is she wants to speak privately to Fred Johnson, which I'm not sure how happy he would be to talk to her, as she is the public voice against him. So this is setting up for a very interesting storyline indeed. It was also very interesting. We even got a few scenes centered around Marvin Candle. I mean Pierre Chang. I mean Jules Pierre Mao. I'm sorry, but I don't think I'll ever be able to think of this actor as anyone other than his character from Lost. Especially since the characters are so damn similar. Both Asian scientists with a French name working with a secret organization on something that could affect the fate of all humanity. So Mao, his scenes were quite interesting, as he's pretty much willing to start an interstellar war if it means success for his project. So that makes him a very dangerous man indeed. So finally, let me get to the Rosinante storyline, which has in Season 1 remains the heart of the show, especially now that Miller has joined up with them. So I'm glad that they did follow up on the fatal dose of radiation that Holden and Miller received, because I did kind of think that was fixed a bit too easily in the Season 1 finale. So I'm glad that they followed up on it, showing that they had to go through extended treatments and that there are lasting consequences from what they suffered, namely that they will never be able to father children, but they both seem okay with this. And overall, it was interesting seeing Miller interact with the crew and start to become one of them. Except the one and only thing that kind of bothered me about this episode was the feud between Amos and Miller. And the main reason I didn't like it is because, I'm sorry, but I could not buy Miller's anger towards Amos for killing his friend. I mean, Amos pointed out that his friend wanted to leave Miller for dead, and Miller just glossed over it by saying, "Oh, it was the right call." I'm sorry, but no. That response from Miller makes no fucking sense, nor does it make any sense that Amos didn't hammer this point down further, because it's a pretty devastating point. Miller would be dead right now. Dead! And his friend wanted to leave him for dead. He wanted to kill him. His friend wanted him dead. And the only reason Miller isn't dead, let me repeat, the only reason Miller did not die, is not deceased, is not a rotting corpse, is not dead, is because Amos killed that dude who wanted Miller dead. And he just says it was the right call and glosses over it and wants to kill Amos, the man who essentially saved his life. He wants to kill him for killing his friend, the man who essentially tried to kill him. I'm sorry, but there's absolutely positively nothing about that storyline that I buy. It seems more like a contrived plot point to artificially create tension between these two characters, and if Miller was really that upset, he did seem to let it go rather quickly as well. But it's all good in the end because they seem to move beyond it. In fact, I really enjoyed that scene where they're all eating lasagna together and bonding over Miller's story. So hopefully they can keep this dynamic because I like it. I also like how Alex's storyline played out, as he was drilled by the Belters that they saved for not doing more, for not saving more people, and how this has weighed on his conscience. And it was kind of funny when he tried to argue this with Amos, and Amos just paid some random woman to sit there and pretend to listen to him. That was quite funny. But really, Alex was quite dumb to go to Amos with this, as he's the least likely person to agree with him. It would have made much more sense for him to go to like Naomi or Holden, but then again, we wouldn't have gotten that funny scene if he did. But then the plot really kicks in when they go to Fred Johnson to launch an attack on the station that they identified as the heart of the operation that, pretty much poisoned Eros. And it was really interesting seeing what he had to go through to get these troops together. It also does a great job in establishing how much of a ragtag group of misfits the OPA really is, and also what a unifying force Fred Johnson is for them, and how he is essential to their cause. And I absolutely loved that scene where Johnson was trying to gather the troops, and there was this loudmouth, bad-mouthing him and undermining his authority. And as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh no. Here we go. Now we're going to get into some boring, drawn-out storyline about this, stupid guy undermining Johnson's power that's going to slow the story down. But then the next thing I knew, Johnson just threw the guy out the airlock. Holy shit. That was awesome. I was cheering when this happened, because not only does it show off what a badass Johnson is, but basically he was throwing this boring storyline that I didn't want to see out the airlock. It was just such an awesome scene. And then we get probably the best action sequence in this show so far that absolutely blew me away, with the Rocinante and Johnson attacking the station. I love that they got right into it and they didn't just drag this out forever. And it was such an intense and amazing sequence that had me engaged and on the edge of my seat the whole time. It was great the way they built up to this, with Alex training and failing every time, and Amos out on the ledge trying to fix the thruster at the risk of his own life. And I love the scenes with Miller being sick on the ship and seeming like he's freaking out, but as soon as they get to the station, he takes over and kicks ass and is able to just tell everyone what's what. And overall, everything about this battle sequence was amazing. But what was more amazing was that they actually took over the station and came face to face with the scientist that we saw, who was in charge of setting the experiment on Eros with the protomolecule. And it was absolutely amazing that we actually learned a lot more about what was going on and what the deal with the protomolecule was. And as many people guessed, well, those who haven't read the books that is, that the protomolecule indeed is an alien life form, and apparently they were testing it because they believe it holds the key to humanity's survival and to adapting and to living in harsh environments such as space and other planetary bodies. Plus, the lead scientists seem to imply that this protomolecule being sent in the first place could be the first step in an alien invasion that they need to plan against. Personally, I hope they don't go down that storyline too much. Maybe these aliens could be like the White Walkers of the series, where there's just a build-up, oh, they're coming, and they don't actually come to the very end. I'd be okay with that. And I just love the whole sequence of them running through the station with all these weird people attached to computers doing weird shit. It was such a surreal sequence. I still don't really get where the soldiers, why the soldiers there were just firing like paint guns. I don't get that, since the weapons on the station of the stealth ship were very real. I don't know. Miller had some statement about them being like prison guards, but I'm not sure. Maybe this will be explained further. But best of all was the scene where they encountered the scientist, and he urged them to let him continue his work, and he didn't care who he worked for. Earth, OPA, makes no difference to him. The only thing that was important to him was the work continues, and I for one believe him, and he managed to convince Fred Johnson, and indeed I'd say he convinced Holden and Naomi as well. So Fred gave the order to keep him alive and to work with him, and then out of nowhere, Miller kills him. I fucking love that. That was awesome. It was so unexpected and so in keeping with Miller's character and his need for revenge on what happened on Eris, and him not giving a shit what anyone else thinks. I cheered when this happened. It was so unexpected, and it's such a great way to end this episode. So my rating for Safe and Doors and Corners out of 10 is a 10, the best. These episodes were simply amazing, and despite my one nitpick about the Miller-Amos conflict, that's such a minor complaint in the grand scheme of things, as every storyline was totally on point and ended with the best battle sequence the show has done, while at the same time actually giving us a lot of important information about the protomolecule, as well as rich, fascinating character stories. These episodes were simply amazing, and if it is any indication on how season 2 will be, we're in for an amazing season. So that's it for my review of Safe and Doors and Corners. Be sure to check back here as I continue to review episodes of The Expanse. Although I won't be able to review every episode every week, I will try to cover it as much as I can, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. Also be sure to check out my channel for many more videos on shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Black Sails, and more, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. Thanks a lot for watching.